Friends, over the last few days, Intel handed in a report card that left Wall Street in a state of total confusion. Revenue came in at $13.7 billion, which beat expectations. Earnings per share hit $0.15, nearly double what analysts were predicting. They even managed to slash operating expenses by 15% year-over-year. By all accounts, this should have been the moment investors popped the champagne. But what actually happened, right after the report dropped, the stock tanked in after-hours trading. And by the next day's close, it had plummeted 17%. Billions of dollars in market value vanished in a single night. This was the most brutal single-day collapse we've seen since August 2024. A lot of investors staring at their screens were left gasping for air. If they're making this much money, why is the market running for the exits like they've seen a ghost? Has the AI story run out of steam, or is the PC market totally dead? I've gone through dozens of pages of conference call records, picking apart every single word. And I can tell you the answer is nothing like what you're thinking. The core of the problem isn't that nobody wants Intel's chips. Quite the opposite, people can't get enough of them. This isn't a company going out of business and having a fire sale. This is a restaurant with a 300-meter line out the door but only 2 pots left in the kitchen. Let me lay out the real reason Wall Street got spooked. It's not that the Q4 numbers were bad, it's that the Q1 guidance was terrifying. Intel's revenue forecast for the first quarter of 2026 is between $11.7 and $12.7 billion, the midpoint of $12 billion is a massive step down from the $12.5 billion Wall Street expected, but the real heartstopper was the gross margin forecast, 34.5%. What does that mean? It means they've dropped from making a solid profit to barely breaking even. This cliff dive in expectations triggered total market panic. The investor logic is simple. The AI wave is huge. Everyone is fighting for computing power, yet Intel can't seem to turn that into profit. So why hold the stock? They voted with their feet and ran. But that's just the surface-level panic. The real truth is hidden in the Q&A session of the call. The analysts were out for blood, and every question pointed to one thing: why is the Q1 guidance so terrible? Intel's answer came down to one word: supply. The CFO used a phrase on that call that is absolutely gut-wrenching for any business: hand-to-mouth. What does that mean? It means every chip they produce today is sold today. The warehouses are empty, the shelves are bare, there is zero buffer left to meet the explosive demand they expect in the second half of 2025. Intel has already burned through the inventory they've been building up for years. He then dropped another bomb since the third quarter of 2025. The company has been aggressively shifting its capacity. They are moving production lines away from PC chips and toward AI server chips. But making chips isn't like cooking a meal where you just turn up the heat. The cycle from raw material to a finished product takes months. The materials they put in during Q3 and Q4 won't become finished goods until the latter half of Q1 2026. This has created a lethal vacuum. The old inventory is gone, and the new capacity is still ramping up. Q1 is stuck right in that gap. So do you see it now? This 17% crash isn't because demand for Intel chips died. It's because Intel can't build them fast enough. This isn't a demand collapse, it's a supply bottleneck. It's a rich man's problem. Orders are piling up, but the factories can't keep pace. If you only look at the stock price, you'd think Intel is dying, but if you look at the orders, you'll see they are being chased by their customers. Behind this struggle is a much bigger story. Intel is placing a massive bet on the revival of American chip manufacturing. To seize the high ground in the server market, they are willing to sacrifice short-term profits and force a capacity shift into the most strategic, high-margin sectors. This is a deliberate, agonizing choice, not a passive defeat. But will this bet pay off? Where exactly is the capacity bottleneck, and how bad is the yield problem? Let's dive deep into the roots of this rich man's problem. We've seen the symptoms: record orders but no stock. Now let's find the cause. It comes down to 3 layers: strategic choice, physical limits, and a capital pivot. First, the strategic choice. In Q3 of 2025, Intel made a decision that made Wall Street sweat. They chose to sacrifice PC for AI. Intel's factory capacity is finite. Think of it like a highway with 2 types of vehicles: PC chips and server chips. Historically, 80% of that road was for PC chips because that market was huge, stable, and brought in consistent cash. Server chips had higher margins but lower volume. But in 2025, the wind changed. The AI wave hit, global data centers began expanding like crazy, and AI server orders started flying in like snow. These orders aren't just a bit more profitable, they are in a completely different league of profitability. Intel's management had to choose, protect the PC base or bet on the AI future. They chose the latter. They forcibly shifted capacity from PC to AI. The PC division's revenue dropped 4% not because people stopped buying, but because Intel took away their production lines. This is a strategic retreat, sacrificing today's revenue to secure tomorrow's dominant position. The result? The data center division hit $4.7 billion, up 15%, marking its fastest growth in a decade. But the price was a shortage in PC business and a Q1 vacuum that hammered the stock by 17%. This is the first root cause of a choice to embrace short-term pain for long-term gain. If it were just about shifting lines, the problem would resolve in a few quarters, but the second root cause is what really keeps investors up at night: yield. During the call, management said something that made the whole industry lean in. While current yields are in line with our internal plans, they are still below the levels I want to see. In the semiconductor world, admitting your yield is lower than expected is practically an act of self-immolation. Why does yield matter so much? Let me explain it simply. You take a silicon wafer and cut it into hundreds of chips, but not all of them work. Some have flaws, some have defects, those get thrown away. The percentage of usable chips is your yield. If your yield is 90%, it means 90 out of 100 chips can be sold. If it's 50%, only 50 can be sold. With the same materials, the same electricity, and the same labor, your competitor gets 90 chips while you only get 50. Every one of your chips starts life with a massive cost disadvantage. So why can't Intel get the yield up? It's about the physical limits of chip making. We are talking about transistors shrunk down to the atomic level. Intel's 188 process has a line width of 1.8 nanometers, about 1/50,000th the thickness of a human hair. At this scale, a single speck of invisible dust, a tiny temperature fluctuation, or a microscopic impurity in a chemical can ruin a chip. The conference call mentioned two key metrics: defect density and consistency. Defect density is how many flaws exist per square centimeter, the lower the better. Consistency is whether the quality stays the same across every batch and every wafer. Intel isn't at the industry lead in these two metrics yet. In plain English, there are still too many flaws, and quality control isn't stable enough. This is a hard physical limitation that money alone can't fix. But here is a counterintuitive investment logic: low yield is bad, but it hides a massive opportunity. Improving yield is almost pure profit. Think about it: improving yield doesn't require building new fabs, buying new machines, or massive hiring. It's about engineering optimization, tuning parameters, and training workers. This means every percentage point the yield goes up, the cost per chip drops while the revenue stays the same. That gap is pure bottom line profit. Management revealed that yield is currently climbing at 7% to 8% every month. They've made accelerating that ramp the #1 priority for 2026. If they win this battle, Intel's gross margins will see a massive rebound, not just because they are selling more, but because every chip becomes cheaper to make. The third root cause is a shift in capital expenditure. For years, Intel's headlines were about massive groundbreaking ceremonies, building fabs in Ohio, Germany, and expanding in Israel. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars, bulldozers everywhere. But this report revealed a critical pivot. CapEx for 2026 will be flat or even slightly down. And the money is moving from building shells to buying gear. This is huge. It means Intel has finally built enough factory space. The bottleneck is no longer about having a place to put machines. It's about having enough machines and making them efficient. It's a pragmatic, tactical move. No more map expansion now, it's about a pinpoint breakthrough. They are putting money into lithography machines, better inspection tools, and precision control systems. This also means Intel is preparing for a massive explosion in its foundry business by 2027 and 2028. Once the yield is up and the capacity is smooth, they won't just be making their own chips. They'll be taking business from TSMC, making chips for Apple, Nvidia, and the rest of the world. This is the ultimate answer to this rich man's problem. Intel isn't shrinking, it's gathering strength. They are sacrificing the Q1 2026 report to secure an entry ticket for the 2028 American chip renaissance. This is Iron Bull Finance, here to help you read the global trends and position yourself for the future. Now that we've talked about the supply side nightmare, let's zoom out. A lot of people are probably thinking, even if Intel fixes its capacity, so what? This is the AI era, and GPS are king. Isn't the CPU just a sidekick now? Over the last 2 years, that's been the market consensus. Every AI report is about NVIDIA and GPS. Jensen Huang stands on stage in his leather jacket, and the stock price takes off. The CPU looks like a washed-up star mentioned occasionally, but never the focus. A lot of investors think Intel is just a company from the last era. But if you think that, you might be missing the most important variable of the AI second half. Let's get one fact straight. AI is not just about training. The AI arms race we've seen so far has been about tech giants hoarding GPS to train massive models like GPT-4 or GPT-5. Training these models requires thousands of GPS working in parallel, burning electricity like money. In that world, raw compute is everything. But training is just the first half. Once a model is trained and enters the commercial application phase, everything changes. This phase is called inference. The model isn't learning anymore. It's using what it learned to process user requests. You ask check the question. It gives an answer, that's inference. You generate an image, that's inference. In the inference phase, compute needs are fundamentally different. Training is a one-time investment. Inference is a continuous stream. Every user, every request, every second consumes compute power. When AI truly reaches billions of users, the compute power needed for inference will be dozens or even hundreds of times greater than for training. And for inference, you don't always need an expensive GPU. For many scenarios that are sensitive to latency, cost, and power, the CPU is actually the more economical and logical choice. But that's not even the CPU's most important value. Intel threw out a concept during this call that really caught my eye: the head node. What is a head node? Imagine the AI systems of the future. It won't just be you talking to chat. It will be countless AI agents collaborating. One agent searches for info, one analyzes data, one generates a report, and another checks for errors. They have to constantly send instructions, pass data, and coordinate. This machine-to-machine communication will be thousands of times greater than human-to-machine traffic. Who is going to conduct this orchestra? The GPU. The GPU is the muscle. It's great for brute force repetition, doing the same action billions of times. But coordination and command is exactly what GPS are bad at. You need a brain. You need something that can handle complex logic, schedule traffic, coordinate priorities, and make decisions in milliseconds. That brain can only be the CPU. Intel calls this the head node. It might not be the one doing the most physical labor, but it's the one giving the orders. Like a symphony, the violinists and flutists are vital, but the conductor standing in front is the one who determines if the performance succeeds or fails. Now, we're always wary of a story that sounds good but doesn't show up in the wallet. Since Intel wants to rely on this head node logic to flip the script, we have to watch the most concrete indicator: actual orders for enterprise-grade servers and the real feedback from cloud providers on the next generation of processors. That's why I've taken this abstract logic of the brain versus muscle and turned it into an Intel bottom fishing manual. It lists several core dimensions I've been analyzing to verify if this conductor logic is actually landing on the ground. I've put that manual in the comments section for you to grab. If this logic holds, it means the demand for CPS won't drop in the AI era, it will rise. Intel revealed on the call that they are seeing rapid growth in the replacement demand for server CPS, and this isn't just about replacing old machines, it's about expansion. As AI workloads get more complex and agents collaborate more frequently, a server that used to need one CPU might now need 2 or 4. A data center that needed 1,000 servers might now need 5,000. This is an upgrade cycle the market is severely underestimating. Everyone is staring at how many GPS NVIDIA sells, but nobody notices that every high-end GPU sold might need more CPS to handle the scheduling and control. The GPU and CPU aren't enemies, they are partners. When AI is hot, the GPU is in short supply, but so is the CPU. This leads to a critical revaluation. The market values NVIDIA as the core of AI infrastructure. But if the CPU is the conductor of the AI era, Intel's valuation needs to be rewritten. It shouldn't be seen as a relic of an old industry, but as the other leg of AI infrastructure, a leg that is currently being ignored. Of course, logic is one thing, but execution is another. It all comes down to whether they can actually build it. That brings us to Intel's true whole card, the 18A process and the foundry business. Investors want to know, does Intel have the chips to win? The answer is hidden in 3 characters: 18A. This is Intel's most advanced manufacturing process, and it's what they've bet the entire house on. Simply put, 18A is Intel's 1.8 nanometer process. The smaller the number, the smaller the transistors, the higher the density, and the better the performance and power efficiency. But the significance of 18A isn't just a smaller number, it's the combination of two black technologies, ribbon-fed gate-all-around transistors and backside power delivery. Let me translate that for you. Traditional transistors can only pinch the water pipe from 3 sides, leaving one side leaking. Ribbon-fed means the gate completely surrounds the channel from all 4 sides, pinching it tight so not a single drop leaks. This means less power leakage and more precision. Then there's backside power delivery. In traditional chips, power and signal lines are all tangled together on the front, like an elevator, and power cables fighting for space in the same shaft. Efficiency is terrible. Backside power delivery moves the power lines to the back of the chip, letting the front focus entirely on signals. It makes signals faster, power consumption lower, and chips smaller. Here is the kicker: currently, there is only one company in the world capable of mass-producing both of these technologies at the same time. It's not TSMC. It's not Samsung. It's Intel. This was a rare moment of pride on the conference call. They stated clearly that 18A has already started shipping. On this specific point, Intel has actually pulled ahead. TSMC's 2 nanometers process is expected in 2025, but it still uses the older FinFET structure without backside power. Samsung is working on GA, but their yield issues have been a nightmare, causing major customers to flee. Intel's 18A is the only process on Earth right now that puts both GA and backside power into mass production. This is why they have the guts to go toe-to-toe with TSMC, but technical leadership is one thing, orders are another. Investors want to know if anyone is actually buying. Intel's timeline is clear but long. Internal 18A products are shipping, proving the tech works. The more advanced 1.4A design kits are out, and they are talking to external customers. But when will the orders actually hit? Management gave a clear window, the second half of 2026 into 2027. That's when customers will make their final decisions. Note that they said decisions, not mass production. Large-scale production won't happen until 2028. This is why Wall Street is anxious. The story is beautiful, but the payoff is slow. However, Intel has another underrated card: advanced packaging and the AI chip era. Packaging is just as important as manufacturing. Modern AI chips aren't just one piece of silicon. They are several chips snapped together like Legos. Some handle compute, some handle storage, some handle communication. The process of snapping them together is packaging. How well you do it determines the chip's performance ceiling. Intel has 2 world-class technologies here: EMIB and Foveros. EMIB connects chips horizontally, and Foveros stacks them vertically. Together, they allow for incredibly complex 3D chip architectures. The CFO revealed a detail that should make your eyes light up: the business opportunity for advanced packaging is already well over $1 billion. And customers are so desperate they are paying deposits just to lock in capacity. This tells us that in the high-end packaging field, Intel has a real moat. Even if the foundry business doesn't hit its stride until 2028, the packaging business is already generating cold, hard cash. Finally, we have to look at the even bigger picture. Intel's move into the foundry business isn't just a corporate decision, it is part of a national strategy. Right now, over 90% of the world's advanced chip capacity is concentrated in Taiwan. This makes the US government extremely nervous. If anything happens in the Taiwan Strait, the global supply chain snaps instantly. From iPhones to F-35 fighter jets, nothing could be built. That's why the US passed the CHIPS Act with tens of billions in subsidies. They need to foster domestic manufacturing, and Intel is the only American company that can carry that flag. TSMC's Arizona fab is being built by workers flown in from Taiwan, using Taiwanese tech. Samsung's Texas fab is struggling with yields. Only Intel is a homegrown US company with complete R&D and manufacturing capabilities and decades of experience. If they don't succeed, the revival of American chipmaking is just a pipe dream. That's why the support from the US government is unprecedented: subsidies, loans, defense orders, policy shifts. They are giving Intel everything they can, not because Intel is perfect, but because the US has no other choice. To wrap it up, 18A is the technical whole card, the only one mass-producing GA and backside power. The foundry business is the long-term vision, but the payoff is 2028. Advanced packaging is the current cash cow, with customers already fighting for space. And supporting it all is the national will of the United States. The tech is there, the customers are talking, and the policy is helping. The only issue is time. Intel needs time to fix its yields, time to win back customer trust, and time to prove it's not a stumbling giant. And time is exactly what the market is short on. When we put it all together, the Q for beat followed by a 17% crash looks like a sell the news event on the surface. But it's actually a supply-side shock. This is a company with too many orders and not enough chips. The hand-to-mouth struggle is the pain of a capacity shift, the friction of a yield ramp, and a strategic choice to sacrifice today for the AI high ground. This is a rich man's problem. Not a terminal illness, it's the pain of growth, not the rattle of death. If we go even higher, the market thinks CPUs are secondary in the AI era, but Intel is telling a different story, as AI moves from training to inference. And from solo agents to massive coordination, the CPU becomes the head node conductor, the GPU is the muscle for brute force, the CPU is the brain for strategy. They are partners. When AI explodes, both are in high demand. This is a logic the market is totally missing. So, is a 17% crash a mispricing? In the short term, the market's fear is real. The Q1 vacuum is real. The yield ramp is long. 2028 is a long way away. But in the long term, this might be the last time you get to buy during a panic. If you believe AI is about inference and coordination, if you believe the CPU is the conductor, and if you believe the US won't let TSMC hold all the cards, then Intel's current struggle isn't a death spiral, it's the darkness before the dawn. Of course, investing is a game of probabilities, whether Intel can deliver, whether yields will ramp, and whether customers will leave TSMC are all big uncertainties. I'm not telling you to buy blindly. I'm telling you that when the market price is based on panic and you see a different story based on logic, that's where the alpha is. Being greedy when others are fearful is easy to say but hard to do. It requires a deep understanding of the floor. Intel's 17% crash looks like a guidance miss, but it's actually a painful, strategic restructuring of a national champion. They are using a short-term gap in the PC business to buy a ticket to the AI server market and aiming to overtake the world on the 188 process. This transition from compute muscle to brain conductor means Intel is at the intersection of a bottoming margin and a technical explosion. This isn't just a wiggle on a balance sheet. It's a snapshot of the power shift in the global semiconductor chain. I've put together all my analysis on Intel's business lines and the key technical tipping points into that Intel bottom fishing manual in the comments. Check it out. If this breakdown helped you see the other side of the market, please give this video a like. Your support helps more investors see the truth. Don't forget to subscribe to Iron Bull Finance. The next time the wind changes, you'll be the first to get the signal. All right.